Okay, good morning, everybody. The time being 9 a.m., I'd like to call today's Judicial and Public Safety Committee meeting to order. It is Thursday, May 11th. My name is Myrna Molina. I will be chairing. First item on the agenda is to establish a quorum. May I please have roll call?
Gums
here.
Linder,
Linder here.
Roth
here.
Tepe,
here.
Williams
here.
Molina.
Molina present.
Liquor.
Okay, next item on the agenda is,
Leonard is here also.
Sorry.
No problem.
our vice chair is also present.
Does that require a vote?
Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes. May I have
I'll make a motion.
Linder seconds.
okay, I have a motion and a second to approve minutes from April 13th. May I please have roll call?
Gums
Yes.
Linder,
Linder, yes.
Roth
Yes.
Tepe,
Yes.
Williams
Yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Molina.
Molina, yes.
Accepted.
Okay, minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda is public comment. We didn't have anybody sign up for public comment. So we will move on to our financial reports are on file. And then we have the Merit Commission.
Good morning.
Morning.
Monday, we tested for correctional officers. We had 23 applicants, 21 took the test, 19 passed. Since then, we've received 2 lateral transfer requests, so a total of 21 interviews. We had 7 interviews Tuesday night, 7 last night, and we'll finish tonight with the last 7. The sheriff should get the eligibility certified list Monday. And then it's up to him. I'm sure there'll be several hired. And just for your information, our next test shouldn't be until November when we test for promotions in the correction facility. And you probably won't see me over the summer because I'm history for a while. I'm going to be gone for a while. Some golf trips and
We come to you, sir.
yeah,
That's good. Yes.
see you in the fall.
You. Any questions or comments for our Merit Commission? Okay, thank you for being here. Okay, we'll move on to KingCom. Ms. Guthrie, good morning.
Good morning. Our monthly reports are on file. As you will see, we did have a pretty large increase in April over our activities. Our phone calls are up substantially and our calls for service are up about 500. I think, as we have warmer weather and we have more officer initiated activity, as well as a number of large scale incidents, which I'm sure you've read about, through the past month. It's just an increase in activity. So if you have any questions about that activity or specific statistics, please let me know. April was Public Education Month for 911, and we did a number of activities. We participated in quite a few job fairs, everywhere from high schools at Fox Valley Career Center out at Canelan to Elgin Community College, their public safety fair, to the circuit clerk's office, which had some great participation. So we were busy doing all things public education for 911. Additionally, some projects that we're working on coming up. We continue to have some space challenges. I don't have a picture for you today, but we redid the communications center in 2021, and that kind of provided us some more space in other parts of the center to look at where we can build some office space. Our poor operations manager and our deputy director have been sharing an office, not a very large space, for approximately a year. So we are working with purchasing and building maintenance on that project, and that is moving forward. We would also like to add a private break space or quiet room for our 911 telecommunicators. So that's within the scope of that project as well. So that we had a preliminary visit this week on Tuesday, and then we will follow up with specifics in the bid process next week, and I will bring more to the committee as we progress through that project. Next, Andy, our radio administrator, is still under the stairs, of the yellow house. So we'll look at what we can do with him next. I'm not sure where we'll be building him an office, but we need to get him from beneath the yellow stairs. And that's all I have this morning. If anybody has any questions.
Okay, any questions for Director Guthrie? Okay, thank you for being here. Okay, we will move on to our sheriff corrections.
Morning, everybody. All our reports are on file. As Ms. Guthrie said, it has been a very busy last month, public safety wise out on the streets, but that's just a usual uptick in nice weather activities. So nothing that we can't handle, and manpower is all good. I'd like everybody to keep an eye out for House Bill 3755. This is something I've been talking about for about 4 years, and we're creating legislation that will allow sheriffs to bring people who are ending their Department of Corrections sentence back to a county jail within 6 to 12 months at the end of their sentence, so we can re-enter them. This has been a passion of mine because Department of Corrections does not do a good job at re-entering folks. $20 in a bus pass right back to where you came from doesn't work. So very proud of this piece of legislation. It passed the House unanimously, and it's now in the Senate. So it should be voted on any minute now, any day now. Is Coroner Russell on the line by chance? I know he's
on the phone.
okay, great.
Yes.
I wanted to talk about and with Ms. Mosser, our upcoming forensics lab that we're working on. And I don't want to steal any thunder from Coroner Russell because he and his staff did a great job of going to Congressman Underwood to get a bunch of funding for it, and that's pending. And Foster, thank you, Ms. Mosser. And we're also looking at the opioid funding to make this happen. So this would be a huge opportunity between the three of us to provide a true forensic lab for Kane County that does everything from A to Z to expedite criminal prosecution and aid in all of our public services. So I just wanted to ask Coroner Russell if he had anything to say about that further, or Ms. Mosser.
Yes, actually, yeah, we're all very excited. I've wanted a lab for a long time. For those who don't know, all of the samples that we test go to a lab in Pennsylvania, and that lab is NMS Labs. It's a highly accredited lab, and it's a very good lab. The problem is the problem is not the product that we get. The problem is the time lag between the time we send it and the time we get the results. And I mean, it's a minimum of 2 weeks by the time we get results from any type of, forensic lab testing. So there is a possibility to have that done locally. There's a lot of benefits to that, all the way from initially, we hope that, the idea is that it will be self-sustaining, and hopefully will progress to the point to where it could actually be, actually creating some revenue to offset some of the other issues. And I knew that it was a big undertaking, so it was not something I could do on my own. And with the state's attorney and the sheriff, we've always worked well together. And I thought, well, here's a great opportunity. Let's get it going. And they opened their arms and have helped me along the way, and done some things to help it get it going. So just recently, within the last couple of months, my team wrote a $3.1 million grant to the Congress, and Bill Foster's office picked it up and recommended it. So we are one of the finalists for the $3.1 million. We will know more in September whether or not we get that. Now, with any grant, we did write 2 other grants as well, but I want to caution the board that with any grant, as you know, it's very specific what it goes to. So it doesn't just go to the general fund or anything like that. It actually has to be specifically used for what it was written for. So before anybody gets big saucer eyes about, the money, I wanted to make that clear that it has to be used for what it was written for. So, but like I said, a lot of positives. I don't want to take up all the sheriff's time, so I just wanted to quickly give a update on that.
Thank you, Coroner. It's just a great example of all of us working together as usual. And Mosser has the microphone in front of her face now, so.
As usual. So just to give you a real life example, if we have a person that passes away because of a drug overdose, and we believe that that person was given the drugs that caused the death, if it is taking us that long to get preliminary results to see what's happening, and then even longer to get that, the person who's dealing drugs is still out on the street and is still dealing drugs that could affect people. So if we can do this in-house, we are going to see a better effect on us being able to stop this same person or these people from continuing to hurt others. So I'm very excited for what Coroner Russell's doing. I think we have a great partnership with the 3 of us, and I look forward to us having an in-house lab.
Thank you for that. I'm going to end on this note. I've had several meetings recently and phone calls or face-to-faces with county board members and other offices. And it's become very apparent to me that I have a bit of a bullseye on the sheriff's office when it comes to that pie chart right there. Over the last 5 years, I think everybody knows that I don't think I've ever come here and asked for more money. The only increase in our budget has always been due to collective bargaining agreements. And of course, that's going to increase annually. We've been incredibly transparent, unlike any other administration at the sheriff's office, with all of our offline funds and asset forfeiture funding. And we use a vast majority of that to not come to you and ask for more money. So about 90% of my budget is personnel, and we've received statewide recognition, at least statewide recognition, for our excellence in police services, where we've gotten to over the last 5 years, and national recognition for our correctional services and what we do in there. So when it comes down to budget time, you guys know I'm incredibly transparent and I don't hold any cards under the table. So we're going to come to you with what we need to do to get the job done and not ask for more money again. So just, I hope you all keep that in mind and have our backs as we go into this budget season. And now we have a resolution.
Okay, Sheriff, go ahead and introduce it.
Yeah, the cost of doing business, a lot of crashes recently with our vehicles, but this is a resolution to approve the replacement of one vehicle that was involved.
Okay,
in
may I
that.
have a motion and a second to discuss and potentially approve?
Leonard moves.
Mr. Leonard moves, Mr. Roth will second.
Second.
Okay, and this is a replacement vehicle. Any comments or questions for our sheriff? Okay, may I please have roll call?
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Linder,
Linder, yes.
Roth,
Roth, yes.
Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
Williams,
Williams, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
passes.
Okay, and this will move on to our finance committee. Any comments or questions for our sheriff regarding his report? Okay, Sheriff Hain, just one question regarding that House bill. When it does pass, I think the wording is may transfer to the sheriff. So not all counties will have that option. Will it be the county's option to accept them, or will it be the state's option to give?
It'll be the sheriff's option. This
Okay.
is largely unpopular with a lot of sheriffs because they don't have the same services we do, but we're trying to set an example here.
And then the funding would be, the state would still be funding those inmates for
Nope.
that period of time?
We're going to fund that.
We would fund them as a county. Okay.
It's an investment in public safety.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you for being here and for your report. We have Emergency Management Director, Mr. Menching on.
Good morning.
Good morning.
As you can see, our report is on file. A couple of the things that I just wanted to highlight from it. When we attended the I Love You Guys Foundation, which is a group that started out of a school shooting out in the Denver area, what they're trying to do is start the standard response protocol, and it's been widely accepted around the country by a lot of school districts. When we went to training on this, what we found is that they also offer a municipal and a business version of the same protocol. And it kind of came at a good time for us as we're looking at the security procedures for the county and updating the county employee emergency handbook. So this is actually going to help us standardize across the board all 1,300 employees with common terminology. And what that does for us is we can then get the police and fire departments throughout the county up on this same language, so that as we work through ROE, they're open to using the same protocol, working with the school districts, so that whether it's an emergency in a school or in one of the county buildings, we're all speaking the same language. And then as we push this out and do more education in the public setting, we'll be able to have businesses that use the same thing. It's an all hazards approach. It's not just for security assessments. It's also for severe weather, shelter in place because of hazardous materials, fire action for evacuations. One school actually in Montana uses the secure aspect when they have to get all the kids inside when there's a dangerous animal on the playground. And we were kind of like, well, what kind of dangerous animal are you dealing with? And I guess they have moose that wander into their kids' playground. So that could become a very hazardous situation. So using this protocol, it actually can be used across the board. And what we like about it is it meets a lot of the the federal and state standards of being common terminology and everybody with the same operating picture. So we're looking at integrating that into a lot of our plans and then using it with the security ad hoc committee as part of our building assessments and stuff like that. So that's one of the big things that we've got going on right now. As you can see, the volunteers last month were quite busy with calls and activities as we start getting into our detail season with all the public events coming. But we had 25 call outs in April. So you can see with Sheriff being busier and KingCom being busier, we also were able to step up and fill that need as well. Unless anybody has any questions, that's my report for this month.
Thank you. Any questions for our OEM director? Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to our state's attorney, Ms. Mosser. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. Our monthly reports are on file. We had hoped to have our end of the year report by today. We are going to have that for next month. The state's attorney's office was incredibly busy in terms of resolving cases. Our end of the year report is essentially about to be over 60 pages, given the wonderful work of the people within the office. And so I'm very excited to present that in a shortened but dynamic PowerPoint presentation during next month's meeting. Sheriff Hain will be there at the front row watching it. We have been busy with other things, including a lot of legislative work. So House Bill 3819 is one that we have proposed through Representative Matt Hansen. House Bill 3819 fixes a lot of items within the Safety Act about deflection programs. And this is specifically affects our King County Collaborative Diversion, which used to be known as pre-arrest diversion. This will give us the legal authority to do even more for the participants within this program to make sure that they're as successful as possible. So if you can keep an eye out on that as it goes through, if anyone is willing to put in legislative slips in support of it, it will just, again, continue to increase our response to people in our community who are in need. We have been working with a lobbyist on a lot of other legislative pieces. I mentioned at a meeting recently that there was one in particular that would mandate every child going through an abuse and neglect case to have an attorney appointed to them. We oppose that not because we don't want them to have an attorney, but because of the age of most children who go through this, having an additional person who's required to communicate with them, especially when they're under 8 and may not even understand the process that they're going through is significant. We've had a great working relationship with the legislators on this, and they've amended that so that it's actually going to be something for children over 8, which is a smaller population, but also require training for any of these attorneys. And so we're excited about that, because if you don't know what you're doing in abuse and neglect, you should not be in that courtroom. So with that being said, I do have a resolution that I would like to present.
Okay. Go ahead and introduce it and then we'll.
Thank you. This is just a budget adjustment to do a rollover of unspent health department grant to the King County Collaborative Diversion Unit. So this was a grant through the health department that was unable to be spent. What we want to do is just put it into collaborative diversion so we could use it for its intended purpose.
Okay, might I have a motion and a second to discuss and potentially approve.
Linder moves.
Mr. Teppi moves.
Roth will second.
Mr. Roth will second. Okay, and this was, I think we provided this fund back in November. So between November and now, we've been really busy.
Yes.
Okay, any comments or questions regarding this resolution? Okay, may I please have roll call?
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Linder,
Linder, yes.
Roth,
Roth, yes.
Teppi,
Teppi, yes.
Williams,
Williams, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
passes.
Okay, and this passes on to our finance committee later on this month.
Thank you. That's it for me.
Okay, any questions for our state's attorney? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to our public defender. Ms. Conant, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. Our reports are on file. I'd be happy to answer any questions about those. I just have one other issue that I just wanted to make the board aware of. No resolution at this time, and hopefully there will not be a resolution forthcoming. But just to give a little bit of a heads up, we have a group of cases in our office now. Within the last few years, the courts have come down with a line of case law that talks about emerging adults. And these are 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds that were charged as adults, generally with violent offenses, murder, gun charges. At the time that they were charged and sentenced, they received either life sentences or what is called a de facto life sentence. And the courts have come down with this line of cases talking about that for these particular individuals, for these particular defendants, that they possibly should have resentencing to take into account things specific to them at the time of the offense. And this included their youth, level of maturity, and brain development, because there is a great deal of research out there that your brain is not fully developed and formed until you reach the age of at least 25. So at this point in time, we have 5 cases in our office that have post-conviction petitions filed where these will be issues in those post-conviction petitions. It's an issue because there is a lot of science and research to it that you do need an expert to explain that to the court, to the state's attorney who has the case. And it also helps us to develop our arguments as well. So we are currently we have spent a lot of time searching for the best expert, both fiscally and in his knowledge that we could find. And so just giving the board a heads up that 5 is a lot. That's more than we have had. So we will have an expert for those. We are hoping that will not cause us to have to come back and ask for additional money, but just wanted to give the board a heads up that this is something that we are seeing as an issue in our office. We do not think that it is something that is going to go from year to year. The reason for that is that each defendant only has a specific amount of time that they can file a post-conviction petition. And so we think that we are getting to the end of the time for most of the individuals who would be able to file on this issue. So we are hopeful that this is just going to be this year, possibly a few next year, and then that would be the end of it. Mostly it's the end of it because also the legislature has taken some steps to kind of remedy this. So for those who are charged after this, there are statutes that address it. So just wanted to give the board a heads up on what's going on with that in our office.
Okay, any questions for
Yes.
Mr. Tepe? Go ahead.
How many people are we talking about, or how many cases are we talking about potentially?
So right now we have 5. We can't really say potentially because the problem is that we don't file the post-conviction petitions, the defendants do. So a post-conviction petition is when someone has already gone through the courts, gone through the appellate court, and then gets one last chance to file something back with the trial court. We don't get appointed to those cases until the defendant has already filed that petition. So unfortunately, we can't tell you how many they would be. We're not thinking that it is going to be a lot because, as I indicated, people are about at the end of their time, that the time frame that they could file those. So just for whatever reason, this year we just have. It's 5, but that doesn't seem like a lot, but it is a lot. And so we just had quite a few this year, but we don't think that this is going to be an ongoing issue year after year.
And you're handling that with present staff, so it's okay.
Yes, with present staff. And the reason that I brought it up is the funding for the expert. But we are working on that and doing our best to use the funds that we have.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you for your report and thank you for being here. Okay, we will move on to Judiciary and Courts. I have Ms. O'Brien here.
Morning, how are you? I want to just let you know, Judge Hall apologized. He was not able to be here this morning. So I'm just going to talk about a couple things briefly that we have. The first item is, I just want to give everyone a heads up. Next month, we'll be bringing a resolution for approving a new jury payment system. We are working with Court Funds, which is a program through Tyler Technologies. We're working with the treasurer, the auditor, and we're in conversations to make a transition from actually paying jurors by check and paying them through a debit card. So we're excited about the opportunity. There's several circuits utilizing this system already. We've got, I think Lake County is using it, Peoria, McHenry. And there's a cost savings to the county. It's cheaper than processing and printing paper checks. And then it's also gives us flexibility and the jurors flexibility in how they want to claim the funds. If they choose not to use a debit card, they have about 6 other options to claim payment. They can still take a paper check or some other ways of payment, a direct deposit. We believe this would be a safer system instead of checks going through the mail nowadays. It's a faster system. And like I said, it'll be saving the county money, but that will be coming next month. Secondly, I've asked some guests to be here this morning. We, judiciary and courts, have been working with an organization called Weston Bridges. It is an organization in Aurora that works with adult individuals with various disabilities. It's an independent living. They provide resources and job opportunities. We have worked with them, and we now have on our staff as a bailiff assistant one of the residents. His name is Victor. And so I just asked that they come and speak a little bit. We've had them come and speak at justice managers for the various elected officials, but we wanted to share the information with the county board as well. So if I could, just a few minutes, I'd like to introduce Blake Klein and Lisa Favre.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to be here this morning. I'm going to just briefly talk a little bit about Weston Bridges. Weston Bridges is part of a larger community where old Copley Hospital was. So when they closed Copley and Rush bought it, the building was vacant for 25 years. And for those of you familiar with Aurora, it was kind of a hub for nefarious activities. So when our developers decided to take it over, it's over 300,000 square feet. It's a large footprint to fill. So they came up with 3 concepts: Bardwell Residences, which is a step-up community, senior living, Weston Bridges, and there's going to be medical and retail space that addresses the lack of that, which was left when Copley closed. So the neighbors around us are thrilled to have a viable group of businesses there to fill the void, but they're also happy to be receiving emergency medical care again in their neighborhood. But with regard to Weston Bridges, we're kind of a unicorn in that we are not a group home. We're privately funded. It's an independent apartment community, which is actually an industry term that refers to the fact that we provide the space and some support for our residents, but we don't do hand over hand. We don't provide direct assistance. We can't help them with personal hygiene and things like that. What we're doing is building a set of independent oriented skills that would hopefully allow them to eventually live completely independently. Some of our residents will be on the track where this is their most appropriate independence. They'll be with us until they move to the senior side. But for some of our residents, we really truly believe that they have the ability to live alone, provided that we help them internalize some skill sets. So with their rent, they get a support coach that helps set goals for them. And those goals can be anything from financial independence to remembering that Tuesday you do your laundry. They also get 2 meals a day, breakfast and dinner, and maybe the most important piece for parents, transportation to their life. So that includes transportation to gainful employment, transportation to groceries and fun events and church and whatever they need to do. So we're really excited to have this project here. It is very meaningful. We have 53 units at Weston Bridges, and by our first anniversary in August, we anticipate that we will be more than halfway full. So that being said, our biggest line of support after they move in with us is the education, or is the employment piece, that we really need to help them find gainful employment, which might not necessarily be bagging at a grocery store. A lot of them went to a college program and have very clear ideas of what they want to do for their careers. So we try and connect the dots. So that being said, I'm going to let Blake fill you in about the employment piece. Thank you very much.
Hello, thank you. Yeah. Okay, so I just wanted to speak a little about the process with Victor. So with any of our residents, when we're looking for employment, we're looking at their interests and the skills. So you can think about a courthouse, it's there's some pretty heavy topics that are going to be discussed there. So that's one of the factors we had to consider when finding a placement for Victor. So, I sat down and we discussed the different responsibilities that would happen at the courthouse and, talked with different residents that would be interested and have the skills necessary. And then through that process, we were able to, find a good candidate and helped him on board. And it's still an ongoing, continuous process where he has some great strengths, but then there's also some areas we need to support. And we still have that relationship where, we'll still check in and follow up and support. So, part of also why we're here, if anybody has any openings or is interested in incorporating and including individuals with disabilities into your various departments, we would be, that would be great. It's very meaningful. I'm very passionate about this, and it's a game changer for these residents and for their families. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Any questions for our guests, Mr. Linder? I'm sorry,
Thank you,
Mr.
Madam
Linder.
Chair. Just have one question for you. Number one, I think it's a wonderful program. I thank you for what you're doing for the community. How is this program being funded?
We have, it's all funded through private owners. We have partners that have raised the money. And we also have worked with National Historical Society because the building is so old that by playing along and when we renovated the building, following their guidelines, we'll get a tax benefit at the end of a 5-year term. But ideally, it's got to be self-supporting in that when we fill it with 53 residents, they will continue to, fund whatever's needed in the building. Right now, we already have 20. So we are moving very quickly. It's a huge endeavor, but it's so needed. And it really, as Blake said, it changes someone from living with their parents and really being dependent on a family member for the rest of their lives to being a meaningful, civically minded part of our community. And we stress a lot that you should register to vote. You should get a library card. We need to take you out to events. You should be volunteering in your community. You need to pay it forward because now you are an independent citizen living amongst us. And it has been a huge difference for our residents even so far.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, I've got a question
Mr.
regarding
Tuppy?
that, but I know that in the past, you've got that the court system got some grants, not only from ARPA, but also from the federal government to finish all of the technical aspect of the courtrooms. And I see if maybe next month you could give a presentation on the status of that.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
We are kind of ARPA. Thank you, Blank. Thank you, Lisa.
Yes, thank you for being here.
We are waiting to hear with the ARP funds. I know it's going through committee. We've gotten approval and we are just waiting for that. We've kind of given an expectation of funding over the course of the next few years. But we're waiting for the committee to let us know how we need to proceed. With the state, we've requested the funds and we're waiting for receipt of the funds. And then we can move forward. So I'd be happy next month. I will have more to share with you. But right now we're just kind of at a standstill.
I was going to say, if you haven't gotten the funds, then you can.
No, exactly right. Like I said, I'm hopeful that maybe by next month we would have the modernization, the state funds. And then I'd be happy to share and we'd be happy to talk about the money that's going towards and what type of equipment we're envisioning and the proposal included.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. O'Brien. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to our Court Services Administration. We have Ms. Saylor here.
So yes, Lisa is on a well-deserved vacation, so I am here in her absence. Real quick, all of our reports are on file. The only thing to highlight on the reports is, I know there have been a lot of conversations over the last months about turnover, and Court Services has had 0 resignations over the last month. We are seeing a decline actually over the last quarter, which is very exciting news. Very happy for that. So just wanted to put that out there for everyone. And with that, I am here. I have a presentation. I know we talked last week or last month, and it's hopefully going to be pretty brief. I wanted to highlight our adult drug court program. When we spoke last month, we talked about our mental health court and thought that it would be good to break down our adult drug court. So I'll talk a little bit about that, and then I will plug the graduation that's coming up soon. So very similar to the other courts, our drug court program was the first in the county. It has been in existence for 23 years. We started in 2000, similar with the minimum requirements, right? You've got to meet statutory requirements. You have to have it. There's an assessment process that I'm going to kind of go into a little bit more. For this, individuals have to want to be part of that program. We have a team-based approach with that. Our drug court is our largest drug court or mental or problem-solving court, sorry. So they have the biggest team approach. We've got 4 probation officers in that court. We've got our drug court coordinator, our probation supervisor, who's here, and I will introduce after the presentation. Our treatment providers, the sheriff's department is part of that, state's attorney, public defender. It is our largest court, and really truly have to highlight that team-based approach, especially with that court. Target population is that high risk, high need. So when we talk about kind of the applications, one of the things that came up last time when we spoke about mental health court is this application process. So really what I wanted to do is kind of talk to you guys a little bit about the people who are denied, because I know that was one of the big questions that came up. So if you look at the applications over the last 3 years, obviously we've got 2020 with the pandemic. We see that increase over 21 and 22 with applications. So for last year, 57 people applied to the program. We accepted 29 of them, and then 26 of those were denied. I know the question last month was, why are people being denied? And so I really wanted to kind of break that down just to kind of explain that it's not just we make that decision and this is what happens. Anybody can apply to be in the program, but there are requirements that they have to meet. And so what you see on that very colorful wheel is that there's a lot of different reasons that people cannot get into the program. It's not just one reason. Majority of the time, it is going to be either they don't meet that risk criteria, they don't meet that need criteria. Sometimes people learn about the program and based off of whatever conversations they're having, they decide they don't want to be part of it. And then I'm going to the state's attorney objection, that is not just they decide they don't want somebody in the program. There's a lot of different reasons that plays out, whether it's statutorily, they don't meet that criteria. There's times when individuals will go on warrant and we can't just keep them in limbo for that period of time. So anybody who, let's say, goes on warrant for a period of time and then the state says, you know what, listen, maybe we should pick this up later. They can reapply at a later time. And so that's also brought into some of these numbers. So that's just kind of, again, for 2022, the reasons that people did not get accepted into the program. Of those that are accepted, this is just a quick look at those that we had for 2022. Majority of them are male. We have saw pre-pandemic a increase in female applicants that were coming into the program, and our actual full demographic of the program shifted. Post-pandemic, we are seeing a shift back to the majority of the individuals in the program are male participants. And then what you see over there is just the breakdown of race. And these are the applicants that are coming in. I feel, we really try to look at, who's coming into the programs and then how that's representative over the county, and feel really good about what we're doing with our applications and then the individuals that are in our programs. This slide is at the end of 2022. So we had 71 participants in the program at the end of 2022. We serviced a lot more throughout the year with drug court, though, because of graduations, people are graduating and we have individuals kind of coming in and out. So at the end of 2022, this is just a look at some of the demographics. Again, you see that male, female, just the split with that. One of the things in the middle is that drug of choice. So every time someone applies and is accepted into the program, we always want to look at that drug of choice. That does not mean that is the only drug of choice that individuals have. That is just the one that they identify as their primary drug of choice. So again, at the end of 2022, that is kind of a look at what the participants in the program identified as their drug of choice. One of the other things that I really wanted to highlight is just the geographic area. So we talk about kind of where individuals are coming from. This has been pretty consistent over the last 5, 6, 7 years with regards to the south is going to be, you know, Aurora, North Aurora, Sugar Grove, that area. We have our Tri-Cities area. And then the north is going to be South Elgin, Burlington, and that area.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
On the drug of choice, why is marijuana not indicated? Is that an oversight? Or
Very few who come into the adult drug court program, their drug of choice is marijuana. It may be a secondary drug that they use, but primarily those that are coming in have an addiction to one of the other drugs that are there. So I would say about 10 years ago, marijuana was high in and you would see it on there, but really over the years, we have seen a decrease in those applying. I think a lot of that has to do to some of the other diversion programs that the county offers with regards to like those lower level drug use.
okay.
So when we talked a little bit about kind of the funding, so drug court is unique. They have been very, very fortunate in that we are currently in our 3rd federal grant that has been awarded consecutively for our drug court program. The last one was in 2020. It was $500,000 over 3 years. We have applied. So our current grant program, our grant ends on September 30th of this year. We have applied for a new grant. So fingers crossed, and we'll see what happens this summer. That grant was actually $1 million over 4 years. And so we are anxious to see how that goes. Over the last couple grants, though, really what we've tried to highlight is inpatient treatment, supportive living, and then medically assisted treatment. Those are going to be the 3 areas that really we see funding that we really want to make sure that we're helping people in those areas. The grants will also allow for additional funding in other areas, but primarily what we're using a lot of those funds for are these 3 areas. I wanted to break down some of that residential and supportive living just because I know we talked a little bit last month about those differences, but also give you guys an idea of the funds that are coming and where they're going. So the blue bars that are there is individuals that were placed residentially without grant dollars. So this is going to be primary funding, DASA beds, things like that they can get funding for. The green is going to be funding with residential. I do believe that because of COVID and the pandemic, you're seeing a lot more people that were placed in 2020. Looking at those numbers for grant dollars, as you see that decrease, this has nothing to do with people not needing the residential. It's really more that they have insurance that's going to help pay for that. And I do want to highlight the jail and the sheriff's department because they have worked really well with the individuals that are in there to make sure that they get that insurance that they need and get the assistance so that we are not having to use as much of our grant dollars to help with residential. Just so everyone's aware, about 85% of everyone who comes into our adult drug court program goes to residential placement. So they are at that high risk, high need level where they are in need of those intensive services. So that's why you see those numbers so high. They are the highest group that we place on a regular basis. Supportive living, again, those are going to be your halfway houses, your 3/4 houses, and that is a really nice step down for individuals who have been in inpatient treatment where they're going to step down. So again, we see those numbers. We've continued to highlight, the grant dollars to help individuals pay for those first couple weeks as they step down from inpatient treatment. And then we get to our graduation. I know that chart makes it look like 2022 was a huge drop off, but I assure you it was only 2 people. So we had 18 graduate in 2020 and 2021, and then 16 graduates over 2022. One of the things that I think comes up as we talk about the graduation to the left there, and I'm not going to go through all of that, but you see some of those requirements. One of what I want to highlight is the graduation is one phase of a 5-phase program in our adult drug court. So each phase looks very similar to what that graduation requirements are with regards to sobriety periods of time, criminal charges, compliance with the rules. So there are, some differences throughout each of those phases, but primarily each phase of that program, in order to move from one phase to the next, you need to meet all of those requirements. And I believe that's all I got. Any questions that you guys have?
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Saylor? Mr. Teppi?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for this presentation. It was probably generated by some of the questions I asked last month.
Some of them, yes.
But want to point out, and I think I did back then, but if not, is that I'm just firmly in favor of this program. I love the results. Okay. I know that you have to work with people on an individual basis. It's that individual plan that gives you the kind of success rate. And my concern was just saying, if you don't have all the resources you need, okay, I'm one of the ones that would be happy to support it. So thank you for all this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. We appreciate that. I think, like I said, we're always evaluating, and I assure you, if ever there is a need, I have no doubt we will come. But I think right now we just keep evaluating and we're doing well with it.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay.
Let me just highlight Mike real quick because I did bring him. So Mike Roman is our drug court supervisor. He has been with the county for 23. Oh, I was going to give him more years. For 23 years, 20 of those were with drug court. So yeah, he started as our drug court officer in the very beginning, and then became a supervisor and took some time down in our Aurora office to supervise, and then came back and is now currently our drug court supervisor. So he has seen drug court through, I think, every facet and every judge and every kind of transition that's happened with that. He also is the one who I think recently sent you guys an email to let you know about the graduation coming up. So my plug for graduation is that next Thursday, May 18th, is our adult drug court graduation. We've talked a little bit about that. If you guys have not been, it really is a good, great experience. We've got 8 individuals that'll be graduating next week. It is going to be 5 o'clock at the Kane County Branch Court.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we will move on to our agenda, to our circuit clerk, Ms. Barrero. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. I would like to let everyone know our report is on file. We just got back from a Tyler conference in San Antonio, which Kane County received the Award of Excellence. And so that was really nice. We did get a really beautiful award, and they are mailing it back to us because it weighs a ton, and I didn't want to put that cost on the county, so they will be mailing that back to us. I would just like a little update on the events we had last month. The expungement event in Aurora was huge. We ended up with over 30 individuals that participated. We did not have as many volunteers this time as attorneys, but we were there till about 1:30 and it ended at noon. Trying to get everybody in. There was over 140 cases that were asked to be expunged on just that event. So it was huge. It was a really good success. I hope some of those do actually get expunged because, you know, they have to go through the whole process. But I'm grateful for everyone that helped out, and Aurora Public Library, they were phenomenal, and it was just amazing. We were very shocked and as to how many folks showed up, and as to how nice everyone was. Just so pleasant and happy that we were there to help them. It was very rewarding as a circuit clerk. It was very rewarding to provide this service. The job fair, not so rewarding. It went pretty good. We did have several county offices there. We had a full room. It was nice. It was set up great. We did have some folks come through. I'm not sure if anybody got any applicants. We have not as of yet, which is mainly because of our starting pay. So that I knew that was going to be a hard sell, but there was several folks that came through the door. So that was nice. And I think having it on a Saturday morning and, you know, one floor where they could just walk in and not go through a building trying to find something worked out very well. So we'll do that again sometime. But unfortunately, we didn't get any applicants out of that. Our annual report is done. We just haven't had time to send it to a printer and get it printed. So hopefully I'll have that out in the next couple of weeks. I also wanted to thank the county board for Tuesday, when we were in the conference, I did not hear the whole meeting, but I do appreciate all the comments that were made by county board members in support of our expungement clerk. I think that there was a misunderstanding as to the salary on that clerk. I do not have the documents in front of me to, clarify, verify anything that was said, but I do appreciate all the comments by the county board members in support of that. It is a huge need. And as you can see, just from our event in last month, that it is a job that is a position that does need to be filled. I've got several different individuals handling that position now, in addition to their normal daily duties. And then I also want to mention, as far as the modernization grant, we are so excited that we are part of that. Over 10 years, that's the first grant the circuit clerk's office has ever received. So, and being over $600,000 is a huge, just phenomenal. I'm just tickled. And then we also, to get the ARPA grants also, I think the circuit clerk's office is moving ahead here, and you're going to see big things coming. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Barrero? Okay, thank you for your report and thank you for being here. Okay, we will move on our agenda to our coroner, Coroner Russell.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Report is on file. We've been pretty consistent with calls from last year, which means we hopefully means we budgeted well. But beyond that, I've covered the lab and the importance of the lab. So I don't really have anything else other than I know we have a resolution. And if anybody has any questions on on that resolution, it's pretty straightforward. It's just the P card thing. So.
Okay, may I have a motion and a second to discuss and potentially approve?
Roth will motion.
Mr. Roth moves.
Leonard, second.
Mr. Leonard seconds. Okay, so just wanted to make sure the people on your resolution were all still here with us, Coroner Russell, and okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, let's go ahead and take roll call on this.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Linder,
Linder, yes.
Roth,
Roth, yes.
Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
Williams,
yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
passes.
Okay, and this will just pass on to our finance committee for review.
Okay,
Okay,
great.
anything else for us, Coroner Russell?
No, that's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments for our coroner? Okay, so we will move on to our old business. I can have Mr. Van Kerkhoff come up, and on the agenda is the ordinance amending Chapter 15 of the King County Code, and this is for our noise ordinance.
Good morning, Mark Van Kerkhoff, Director of Development and Community Services. You have in your agenda this morning a slightly revised version than what you had last month. Mainly the changes from last month are in the whereases were updated to reflect that this ordinance is adding some measurable standards to the noise section of the Chapter 15 nuisance and property maintenance, as well as it adds a line to the exemptions portion of that same chapter. That chapter exempts agricultural activities. This proposes adding an exemption to the exemption, basically stating that in regards to noise, sound not directly related to agricultural activities shall not be exempt. And the intention of that is we do have, or we have had in the past, noise concerns and issues emanating from a property that is zoned for agriculture and is primarily used for agriculture, but they might have other activities causing noise and disturbance to residential properties. So this would not be in conflict with any agricultural activities. Those types of noises would still be exempt, but it'd be the non-agricultural noise that would not fall under that exemption any further. There were some questions on decibel levels. I do have some slides just to help kind of illustrate that. If you have a minute here. First of all, this is a updated slide on sound levels for measurable standards. Other counties have adopted in many municipalities decibel levels that are for daytime hours and nighttime hours. Kendall County uses 60 for their general area, 65, it's a special use, 55 for nighttime. DuPage County, 71 and 61, slightly different levels. So to kind of help illustrate that, this is a chart from the Hearing Health Foundation that kind of illustrate where sounds are generally considered to be safe or can harm hearing over time. Do want to differentiate the fact that, well, one, I've learned a lot about sound and I realize there's a lot that I still don't know. So I'm not purporting to be an expert here, but generally, and when you get into the data on sound, there's a couple different categories or buckets. One is the kind of sound that is actually harmful to hearing exposure, and you see a lot of data around with OSHA and workplace environments and intensity of sound and duration of sound. And then you get into the area which we're really talking about this morning, that is sound that is a nuisance or an annoyance or disruptive to quality of life, those kind of things. So this kind of gives a little bit of an illustration. 70 to 71 seems to be that threshold point that kind of reflects the DuPage County level. 50 to 60 is sort of your average room noise type of thing. So, and this, they try to give you some real life examples of what that decibel level might sound like to a typical person. The other graphic I found that might be helpful, this is from the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, in regards with some of the sound work they've done around airports. And they came up with what they call a day-night level, average over 24 hours, what these different types of environments might see as an average decibel level. Again, in a very quiet suburban setting, would be average day-night level over a 24-hour period would be 50, and then that goes up as you get into more developed or urban residential type environments. And I show this to you this morning just to kind of reflect the, what we hear from constituents is if you're already in a quiet environment, a sound level noise is more disruptive than if you're already in a fairly noisy urban environment where there's a lot of ambient noise going on as well. So it gives you a little idea, maybe the difference between the levels that DuPage County has adapted and Kendall County has adapted. So that I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, the state's attorney has reviewed this. They had some comments. They're available here this morning, which I appreciate, to answer some questions. But they did verify that you have the authority to regulate noise as a nuisance level issue. And like I said, they're here to answer any questions as well.
Okay, so let's start by, if we have a motion in a second to discuss and potentially approve this ordinance.
Leonard moves.
Mr. Leonard moves.
Rothwell second.
Mr. Rothwell second, and I have Ms. Gums on first. Ms. Gums, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I have a few concerns about this ordinance. I'm not comfortable still with it. You actually said something, Mark, that is my main concern. Certainly understand the constituents' issues. I would like to see included something that will solve the problem, language that would indicate something along the lines of noise that is unreasonable or disturbs or interferes with the comfort or of a person or persons. Because, and also frequency, so repetitive or frequent noise. That way, I see so many unintended consequences with this ordinance. I mean, the decibel of a group of children in the backyard can reach 120. I don't want to see those things happen, but I also want to see this problem solved. So if we would add something like frequent or repetitive or continuous sound, that would solve the issue at hand. That's part of my concern.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Mr. Leonard?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know if this goes to Mr. Van Kerkhoff, to the sheriff, or to the state's attorney. But I noticed on the chart that motorcycle noise was 100 decibels. For areas that have concern about these tracks around the residential areas, would this disallow that then, or?
So if I could, I'll answer both questions. So one, this is points number 12 and 13 are additions to what's already adapted in the county code. So there already is language in the ordinance talking about harsh and prolonged noise is being declared a nuisance. So this is not removing those sections of the county code. What this does is it does add a measurement that the sheriff's deputies can use as a tool in going out and determining, if it is harsh, prolonged, disturbance type of noise. They have also the ability to measure that and to be able to cite a violation. So I don't know if that answers your question, Ms. Gumbs, or not, but it is that language is already in the ordinance and would be used in conjunction with these measurements.
It does answer the question. However, I'm still a little confused because prolonged and nuisance noise should be solving the problem of our complaints that we're getting. And I certainly have sympathy for those complaints. I can't even imagine what they're going through. So I'm really worried about the unintended consequences for graduation parties, for children's, barbecues when they have their friends over.
Yeah,
I know that sounds, go ahead.
No, let me go ahead and have the sheriff chime in on that because I think he has something to add to your concerns.
Okay, good.
Thank you for that. So I'm going to make an analogy here. So if I pull somebody over for going 12 miles an hour over the speed limit and I check their driver's license and they've never had a ticket, never been stopped, they're probably going to get a warning. This is giving us a mechanism. We all have to remember it's deputy discretion at the end of the day. While the law may be on the books, whether it's a criminal law or whether it's a county ordinance, it's going to be the deputy discretion. So this gives us a mechanism to enforce those egregious, constant violators. And noise complaints, I think Ms. Guthrie would agree, are probably one of our top 3 calls that we get at the sheriff's office. So, if it is that graduation party, we're going to show up there, we're going to ask them to turn it down, and nobody's going to be getting an ordinance ticket. If they're doing this party every single weekend, or we have a neighborhood where it's become an off-road racetrack for ATVs in an inappropriate place, they're probably going to get cited. So really, again, we got to remember this is just a tool for us.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Tepe?
Thank you, and I'm glad the sheriff is here. I live in a retirement community where honking a horn is considered a noise violation. But I have a kind of a question associated with how this would be administered. So the ordinance says that it's the noise from my patio if I'm the complaining person, or the noise that would be read by my patio. So in order for the sheriff or the deputy to issue a citation, do they have to measure it themselves? Or,
the complainant or the deputy?
Pardon?
Does who have to measure it? The complainant?
In order for you to issue a citation, or one of your deputies, of course, do they have to measure the noise?
Yes. So we did a little bit of research as we were working on this, and I simply went on Amazon.com and looked at decibel readers, and they're about $20 a piece. So we're going to fund that for all 70 patrol personnel that we have. And we don't necessarily, because the vast majority of our noise complaints come from anonymous complainants. They don't want to be seen by an officer. They just call and say, send a deputy out. So we would go to a public location, probably in the middle of the street where the call is occurring, and we would have the decibel reader, and then we would take that measurement to determine if we're going to issue a citation.
So if you can see that activities are going on, but at the time when your deputies are there, there's no activity occurring that's going to do the noise.
Well, then
you're not going to be able to.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we'll have.
But you might be able to issue a warning.
This happens at least 5 times a day, I would say, that we get calls like that. So we'll just have a conversation and move on.
Thank you.
And then if I'll answer Mr. Leonard's question. So this is designed to address any noise. We started out with music and amplified sound, and then concerns over ATVs and motocross. So this would address any source of the noise. Noise can vary. The case of sound is probably emanating from one location, fairly easy to measure. If it's emanating from a moving vehicle, a little bit, maybe harder, to measure. Doesn't necessarily prohibit that activity, but it certainly gives a measurement of whether that activity is exceeding the threshold. The ordinance says it would be measured or could be measured from the property line of the residential property with the complaint. It could give guidance to the property owner where the source is emanating from in terms of utilizing mitigating factors to change that. We've actually had a couple of cases where we're working with folks where we've had repetitive sound complaints, and they have also said we would like to have a decibel measurement so that we can measure ourselves if our party is too loud or this activity is too loud. So there seems to be some, agreement on both sides of wanting to know whether it exceeds the standard as a violation or not. So I hope that answers your question somewhat, but.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Linder?
Okay, I've been listening to all this and I sort of get it. But basically, our big complaint is this racetrack that's popped up in a neighborhood. This ordinance passes, will it basically put that out of business? Is there that 50, 55 going to be something that they can't lower their noise to?
Well, I mean, the ordinance is not designed to address a specific instance. We've had it's in response to a rise in sound complaints. In my
and I know we've had those
county, these kind of complaints do come up, and the county board has reviewed whether to address it or not. This past year, or last couple of years, we've had a real increase, whether it's population increase or COVID or just trends with people in having some level of control. To be able to measure it has been, working with the sheriff's office and other departments.
And I know in the liquor commission, we had something come up with a business that has historically had some outdoor serving and some music. And there were some questions about that, the graduation parties, those things, somebody can turn it down. But I guess I'm concerned, we pass this ordinance and then we're back here in 2 months because the racetrack is still being a nuisance. Is this sufficient to handle that nuisance? Because this is not a dial that you can just turn down.
Yeah, so to answer that specific question, I would say this is not the only, if that were a goal, that this would not be the only tool to do that. This would have a standard for issuing citations if the noise from that particular property was exceeding these decibel levels. The one you're referring to is a residential private use. If they were to exceed that and become a business, as you mentioned, a business, then they would be in violation of the zoning ordinance for operating a business from a residential property. So there are other tools in place for that. There's nothing currently, the county board does not prohibit private use of motocross or ATV vehicles on private property. So that would be a different type of regulation in order to prohibit that activity altogether.
Okay, so the sheriff has bought these $20 decibel readers. Have we gone out and stood in the middle of that street and measured the noise that's coming from there now?
Well, this ordinance would allow them, if someone was complaining, the sheriff deputy could be invited onto that person's residential property, stand at their property line and measure it from that point.
But do we have an idea of what the noise level is now on a typical Sunday afternoon? We don't.
I mean, we have not measured. I don't recall whether some of the emails from concerned persons if they've measured it. I would recommend going off of a sheriff deputy's measurement is evidence on that.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Williams.
thank you. I raised some concerns with the ordinance at our last meeting, and I met with Mr. Van Kerkhoff. Went on vacation, didn't give him my comments. I generally think we do need some sort of decibel level standard. I mean, that's not subjective, that's an objective standard. Whether it's the Kendall County model or the DuPage County model, I don't know if I'm prepared to make that determination right now. I've looked at the ordinance, not only is proposed by staff, but also the entire nuisance ordinance. I think we need to make some tweaks because I still think there's some loopholes in the reading of the statute or the code in its entirety that would maybe allow some uses to continue. So I'd like to, if table this for a month, get my comments to Mr. Van Kerkhoff, maybe have a conversation with Sheriff Hain and get a better understanding of what really we're dealing with, because I'm not sure it's at a point where we're ready to vote on it as it sits here today.
Okay, before I entertain that motion, I did want State's Attorney Coyle or O'Brien to come up. And I'd like to thank Mr. Van Kerkhoff. At this point, he's kind of brought the ball to us. So I want to make sure that he's done his duty. And we've been doing this since October when it was first brought to us by Mr. Kenyon and Ms. Wonicki at the time to discuss these concerns from her constituents. So at this point, I guess my request is to have your opinion as to how it reads now and to kind of have some edits so that we have it prepared and ready for the county in the future so we can vote on it.
So sure, I guess I'll start from kind of the beginning that under the, sorry, this is a little loud. And again, Vince Coyle from the King County State Attorney's Office. Under the criminal code for nuisances, it does say that nothing in this section shall prevent the county from declaring what are nuisances and how to abate them. So clearly this falls under that. Something to note is that the General Assembly gave specific authority to the Environmental Protection Board to regulate noise. It's my understanding that they are from Mr. Van Kerkhoff has indicated that the EPA is not enforcing any kind of noise right now, but those laws are still on the books. So one of the first points that we made is that whatever the county decides to pass, they should ensure that it's not inconsistent with what the Environmental Protection Board has. They have regulations that are very technical, which I don't fully understand at this point either. So I certainly would appreciate any kind of information from the EPA as to whether the levels that this county comes up with is in spirit or in concert with what they have. The cases that I've read indicate as long as the municipality or county goes in line with whatever the EPA is trying to do, that should be sufficient. Another thing I think to Mr. Williams' point is trying to determine the appropriate levels. So I did see a couple charts here. If the law were to be challenged, it would be the duty of the county to give evidence as to the rational basis for getting those levels. And more specifically, the reasonableness, like how did the county decide that those levels were the appropriate levels? I don't know much about the foundation with the chart that was given. I do know that the county does have some noise standards already under the zoning regarding light industry. And they have their standards adopted by the American Standards Association. So again, I don't know where the levels of this specific proposed ordinance, where those are coming from, but certainly if there's a challenge, we need as a county to show the reasonableness and that it wasn't arbitrarily selected. So if the county can be in a position to those 2 points sufficiently show that it's in concert with the EPA and that the basis for choosing those levels are reasonable, then it should do well in court if someone were to challenge it.
So my question, State's Attorney Coyle, is the way the ordinance is presented today. Do you feel that we can still edit it to make it read better? And if so, could you help us with that?
I'm happy to assist in any way. I guess my point is, the way that it's written right now, I can't tell you whether the levels are appropriate. I mean, there's been evidence shown that other counties have, similar levels. I can't speak to how they got it. If the county has evidence to show that the levels are appropriate right now, then I don't know how much more of a change would need as it relates to that. It would just be the information I needs to be provided to our office to review. That would be helpful. But those are the things that I can think of right now.
Okay, and Sheriff Hayne, if I can get your opinion, I know my intention in making sure that we form some kind of ordinance in this is to address the needs that our constituents are requesting, our residents, and to help you with the tools you need to enforce that. So what other input can you provide us, do you think, with this ordinance as written? Do you think it's something that it's ready for you to enforce, or would you like some changes made?
Absolutely. I think setting a basement and a ceiling for noise levels is important. It'll, again, give us that tool that we don't have right now. And as you guys consider this, Miss Guthrie is much smarter than I, and she said, there's an app for that. So I downloaded Decibel X. It was the one with the most number of ratings on the App Store. And, we're talking, it says right now at a 70 decibel rating right now, but it's probably because it's right close to my face and I'm talking. But we're going to do some more experimentation with the actual handheld decibel readers. But I encourage you guys, again, as we table this and talk further, to download one of these apps and just for your own reference, get an idea of what the noise levels are around you, and turn the stereo up in the house, turn it down, start the car, etc.
Okay, Mr. Leonard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I understand Mr. Williams' concerns, and if there are loopholes, I have no problem with tabling it for 30 days. The other thing I think we need to consider too is the timing of this. If this moves forward now, it will be on the June county board. If we don't, it'll be July. And I think the noise ordinance probably comes into play probably April through October mostly. So we could always amend it too if we move it forward. But if there are loopholes or considerations, I think we should talk to the state's attorney's office, the sheriff, the EPA, and Mr. Van Kerkhoff, and make sure that we have a consolidated agreement on that, with the understanding that we can always amend it too.
Yeah, I don't want it to leave our committee without it being fully vetted by everybody. So let's make sure that we continue to work on this, but I do want it to come to a vote here soon. I think our constituents deserve that. Go ahead, Sheriff Hayne.
I just really want to thank Mr. Coyle, Mr. O'Brien, and Mr. Van Kerkhoff. That's three really smart people that put a lot of work into this. So thank you for all your time.
And Mr. Tepe.
Thank you. Earlier, Mr. Linder was referring to it as the primary reason was the noise associated with some ATVs and things of that nature. To me, the primary thing associated with the noise level that I think would be handled by this is the shooting of high-powered rifles in areas, that residential areas where people are not able to use their patio. That had another safety issue about it, but I think it could be handled by the noise ordinance. So because of that, and because of the summer, I'm not interested in delaying this. I think we've had enough time to go over this, and I think we've got an ordinance that can be withheld, and I'd urge approval of this today.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Daughtry?
Yeah, in reference to that, specifically talking about the shooting, we are not exempting shooting on farmland, correct?
I don't think this ordinance is I think maybe you're referring to ordinance in chapter 12, but Mr. Van Kerkhoff, I'm not sure.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Well, it says in regards to noise under the exemptions, regards to noise, sound not directly related to agricultural activities shall not be exempt. Well, shooting on your property would be not a agricultural activity, so that would not be exempt. Right?
If you're referring to sound from shooting on property, this is just addressing noise, not any particular noise, ATV or music or sound from a discharge. It's just noise in general.
So, right. So even though you're not directly addressing firearms, this addresses firearms and completely eliminates the ability to shoot anywhere on any property in all of Kane County.
I don't believe so. Sheriff Hayne, would that be your opinion?
I'm sorry, I'm multitasking. What was your question?
Mr. Dorcher, do you want to repeat your question?
So even though this does not directly address firearms, the noise limit does directly address the noise coming from a firearm. So all firearm discharge on all properties in all of Kane County would no longer be allowed.
Well, we are developing another ordinance, I believe, to address firearm usage. That's still in the works. And when it comes to firearms, again, it's going to be deputy discretion, whether it's this ordinance or whether it's criminal law. Most of the issues that we face with firearms comes down to criminal law and much less noise related. So, and we can take this down into the weeds and hypothetical, a lot of different things.
Yeah, I'm not interested in gardening today, so we're not going to get into the weeds.
Thank you.
I would apologize. When we initially started on these issues together back in the fall, I think I'm the one who initially proposed or thought that maybe both issues could be addressed in Chapter 15 under nuisances and property maintenance relative to noise. And that's where it does take a team. And our state's attorney's office wisely redirected anything regarding discharge of firearms to a separate ordinance. So my apologies if there's confusion on the intent of this ordinance for noise and the separate effort for what counties are authorized to do by state statutes regarding the discharge of firearms. And that becomes a bigger item because there are certain laws under hunting, under state statutes, as well as specific ones for discharge of firearms. So it's not the intent of this ordinance to prohibit discharge of any firearm in the county, to answer your question.
I understand it's not the intent, but because of the way it's written, overly broad, 65 decibels from any point, and it's not exempt. So
thank you, Mr. Daughtry.
it would
Any
be
other,
included, right?
Mr. O'Brien, did you have something to add?
Yes, ma'am. The state's attorney also wants to point out that the way this is drafted, the title of this is noise. But if you read the first sentence, it talks about sound, not noise. The connotation here is that all sound is prohibited. That flows into a receiving residential area. Doesn't talk about noise or just talks about sound. That would include what Mr. Lasky's been talking about, would be discharge of firearms. It is a very broad term. It doesn't connote that anybody is actually doing something to cause this sound. It could be the sound that you see in that chart up there that talks about traffic. It talks about other things that a property owner, another person, would not be responsible for generating. So it talks about noise, very broad term. It could be interpreted to be a lot of things. This is a very broad statute, and the state's attorney's office have discussed back and forth with Mr. Van Kerkhoff that it's going to be on that basis. Someone who is being accused based on a reading of a decimeter could challenge this statute. The only way to prove this case is to have a decimeter. And the decimeter has to be there and it has to be registering this at the time that this sound is being emitted from someplace. I think that you need to equate this with what it used to be when you had radar guns came out. And you used a radar gun to determine the speed of a moving vehicle. So,
Okay. So I guess what we've asked then is for you, Mr. O'Brien, and Mr. Coyle to work on the idea and the intention of what Mr. Van Kerkhoff and the community has requested, fine tune it, make sure the definitions meet criteria, and bring this back next month so that we can review it in its entirety, along with Mr. Williams' suggestions. So I'd like to make a motion to table this for 30 days.
Second.
Okay, may I have roll call, please?
Gums, Linder,
No.
Roth,
Roth, yes.
Tepe,
No.
Williams,
Williams, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
passes with 2 noes.
Okay, so we're going to discuss this next month. Be prepared. I will bring this to a vote next month and let's get something done quickly. Okay, I may have a motion to place written reports on file.
Leonard moves.
Roth seconds.
Okay, roll call, please.
Gums, Linder,
Yes.
Roth,
Yes.
Tepe,
Zepi, yes.
Williams,
Williams, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
accepted.
Okay, reports are placed on file. We have no need for executive session. May I have a motion and a second to adjourn?
Roth will make the motion to adjourn. Linder second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, thank you.